Welcome to NewsNation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
A new push from a group of House lawmakers tonight demanding answers from the intelligence community on UFOs, answers they did not get during the historic UFO hearing. In a letter to the Inspector General, 6 members of Congress are asking for specific details about possible government UFO programs that Air Force veteran and former intelligence officer David Grush said he could not share publicly. The lawmakers say they are being blocked from reviewing all of that classified information. Grush first made the whistleblower claims exclusively here on NewsNation. He testified that he shared any information he had with the Inspector General.
And I know a lot of Congress talked about we're going to go to Area 51 and, and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just, and we move like a glacier. And as soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up, but please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General. I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
And so now lawmakers say they are going to go directly to the Inspector General. Tennessee Republican Representative Tim Burchett led the group behind that letter demanding information. Representative Burchett joins us now. Representative, I read the letter to the Inspector General. It was a good letter. The thing I was wondering, though, Congressman, is what if they just blow you off? Like, what if they get the letter and do they have to respond? Do they have to answer any of? I think you had 3 really serious questions in there. Do they have to even answer them?
Yeah, they do technically, but of course they won't. This cover-up will continue, and I predict they're not going to let us have a select committee. They're going to go down the list and just shut this thing down. One, we got way too much publicity. We called way too much attention to the war pimps at the Pentagon. And other things, we know how much money they're wasting on these wild programs, and they won't even release this information. They want more money to study it, yet they say they don't exist. Yet we have footage, Pentagon footage, or Defense Department footage. So it just goes down the list, and it's just a complete cover-up, top to bottom, this thing, and they're just trying to run the clock out. You look at the Tic-Tac videos, not TikTok, but Tic-Tac like the candy right there they denied they even existed, and then they were leaked. And then they came forward and said, in fact, they do exist. So it just continues. It's very frustrating, but they do it because they're allowed to do it, and because both sides of the aisle are compromised on this issue for whatever reason.
You don't sound as optimistic, Congressman. I think last time I spoke to you was just a couple days after the hearings, and you were sort of like on fire. I was getting this feeling like we were really going to get info. Tonight, you sound a little more like they're just shutting you down every way, and we might not find out anything.
We're going to keep digging, and I'm going to find something out. I mean, look what happened to poor David Grush.
Yeah.
They discredited him. They attack a man that has PTSD. I mean, for goodness sakes, this is the United States of America. We ought to honor our veterans. Well, at least we do in Tennessee. We might not in Washington, D.C. And shame on both parties for allowing this, because this will provide a chilling effect to future whistleblowers. They will see this. They will see that we won't have a select committee. We won't be able to call this stuff in. We won't be able to provide them any protection. Whistleblowers will just be another name in the history books because we're gutless, and that's both parties.
That's a shame to hear. Representative Luna said last week that you were trying to reinstitute Grush's security clearance so that you could get him in a confidential area where you could get more answers, because he's not allowed to talk openly about some of this stuff at the hearings. Any progress on that? Do you think that may happen soon?
No, and that's why my friend Matt Gaetz suggested and actually requested the select committee from the speaker and the chairman of the committee. So it's really in their court right now. If the UFO community wants to request their congressman to get on board with this, I think it would be a good thing. I think if they got a few emails showing the seriousness of this nature, because like I said in the hearing, I'm not bringing out little green man. We're not bringing out a flying saucer. We just want transparency, man. This is ridiculous. It's it's an agency that never has passed an audit. At one time, Department of Defense, we're told 60% of their assets are unaccounted for. I mean, if you and I had that, brother, we'd be in jail. We would be in jail if it was our business or any other entity, but it's the Pentagon, and they're allowed to do it.
Right, and our elected leaders like you don't even know where the money's going, which is kind of unbelievable. I want to ask you about this. I'm so interested in this. Congress still has to vote on the National Defense Appropriations Act. Senator Schumer put that portion in there that requires disclosure when it comes to UFOs, which was a big deal if that requirement makes it in. But I heard you, I think it was last week, saying that you don't think it's going to make it in, that you think it's going to get cut out. I mean, what's that all about? You really think that's going to happen?
What I think I really meant to say was if it gets it in, it's not going to do anything. What it is, it provides, if you dig into it, it provides a clearinghouse. So we're going to have the Pentagon, again, unelected bureaucrats who've never fired a shot in anger, sitting behind a desk somewhere, deciding what photos, what information comes out on an issue they said does not exist. And they have video footage of it from their own members showing that it does. We have testimony of these pilots chasing these UFOs. Yet, it's just a complete circle. They say they don't exist, but send us money. And I'm sure Senator Schumer and good due diligence, but he's a tax and spend liberal. He's going to put millions in there for the Pentagon to release this stuff. Look, all I want is transparency. Release the files. Let me handle it. I think I can handle it. They still won't release the Kennedy assassination files 60 years ago. Nobody's even alive.
It's like just tell the American people what's going on and let them decide for themselves what to think, whether you believe in UFOs or not. Maybe it's some other kind of technology. But I'm interested to see if that gets pulled out of the National Defense Appropriations Act. I think that'll be really telling if for some reason they pulled that line out. But we'll stay on it, Congressman. I know you are too, behind the scenes, and we'll get back with you soon. Thanks for coming on.
It wouldn't be out there if it wasn't for y'all. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll stay on it. That's why we have you on. You gotta keep the pressure on. So.
All right, welcome back. So is the U.S. government trying to send signals out beyond humans? That is a question that is posed in a new opinion piece in The Hill. Merrick von Rennenkampf writes the Pentagon's UFO office is sending cryptic alien messages. He's a UFO expert, was an analyst with the State Department as well as an Obama administration appointee over at the U.S. Department of Defense, and he joins us now. Merrick, thank you for being here on The Hill. What do you mean by that? The Pentagon's UFO office is sending cryptic alien messages. Explain it, please.
Thanks for having me on. So the Pentagon is a new UFO office that has been stood up at the urging of Congress, and it's about 30 people working in this office. It's a fairly significant undertaking. And they just unveiled their website. And one of the documents on that website is a mission overview, basically. And tucked in that document is a stock image that is titled Alien Technology in a Metallic Ball. And that normally, under normal circumstances, could be taken and interpreted any possible way. Could be a prank by an intern, what have you. But there's a fascinating amount of context here that leads me to believe that there's more than meets the eye. And in short,
like what? Because some people might hear that and say, Mark, come on, that's a stretch. But what would you tell them?
Absolutely. So the director of the Pentagon's office gave a presentation back in May, and that he said that the most commonly observed UFO are metallic orbs. I'm quoting directly, metallic orbs that have been seen all around the world conducting very interesting apparent maneuver. So, Blake, I don't know if you know of any metallic orbs that can maneuver, but if you do, I'd love to drive one. I'd love to have one in my garage. This goes back up to World War II. So at the end of World War II.
Yeah, so there's, a headline from the New York Times, floating mystery ball is a new Nazi air weapon, December 14th, 1944, which, I mean, if pilots were, or, folks back then you're saying are basically seeing the things that we're seeing now, what is it, 80 years later, 75 years later?
Bingo. You get the nail on the head. So that started back in World War II, and it continued. You see reporting in the late 1940s into the early 1950s consistently in government documents saying that the most commonly observed UFO, just like today, is a metallic sphere, a metallic orb, a circular object. And fast forward to 2014 and 2015, and naval aviators off the U.S. East Coast were detecting on their sensors very strange objects that were conducting very, very bizarre maneuvers. They were stationary against hurricane force winds. They were flying at Mach 2, and eventually they got eyeballs on these things. And guess what?
Yeah.
They were round spheres. So my radar is peaked here. My interest is peaked.
But bring me back to the website, Mark. Bring me back to the website. What is we're sending out a signal?
Yes. So tucking away a stock image that is literally titled, it's an Adobe stock image that's titled Alien Technology in a Metallic Ball. That to me is interesting. Yes, exactly. That's literally the name of that image. So that is sending an interesting message. I do you think it's interesting, Blake? I certainly do, given all of the context.
I'm fascinated by all this. I think it's
Yeah, I was just going to say, absent all of that context, I think there's, there's maybe a prank at play here, or we don't need to read too deeply into this. But given the history of this and what we're seeing, I'm intrigued.
Mark von Ronnenkampf, thank you for joining us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time. We'll have you on back.
Well, let's keep our eyes to the skies this morning. Not even 2 months since bombshell whistleblower testimony alleging a secret U.S. government program to retrieve alien spacecraft. And lawmakers say their efforts to get more information are being stonewalled. Representatives Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna say they have faced pushback trying to get security clearance for the whistleblower David Grush so he can discuss classified information he wasn't able to share during his testimony. This, by the way, is a uniquely American problem. In several other countries, documents describing UFO encounters are widely available to anybody who wants to see it. So let's bring in Nick Pope. He investigated UFOs for the British Ministry of Defense. Nick, it's good to have you again.
Thank you.
The contrast and comparison here, it's pretty stark. I mean, in Brazil, UFO sightings and reports are all public information, right? I mean, no security clearances. People like you and me could access the files, no heavily redacted documents, all the visual evidence that you could want. And yet here in the U.S., forget about it. Highly sensitive, lock and key. Why is that the case?
I think the problem comes because of the backstory in the United States. There's no legal or constitutional problem with any nation saying we've discovered extraterrestrial life. But if it emerges that a nation has known about this for decades and has consistently hidden that from the people, then that is a problem. And of course, until fairly recently, the official position of the US government was no one's looking at UFOs at all and no one's interested. We found out that wasn't true. So what else are we going to find out isn't true? So there are legal problems and problems perhaps with amnesty negotiations for people who've been sitting on this.
Yeah, and I know that the UK has declassified and released about 60,000 pages of UAP information, a lot of which you yourself wrote, right? Do you like that it's available, and declassified for the public to be privy to?
Yes, I'm a great believer in freedom of information, open government, and transparency. And it's great to see some of the files and documents that I worked on back in the Ministry of Defense now declassified and available at the National Archives. That said, I do appreciate that there are valid reasons for keeping some information secret. For example, you talked in the previous piece about Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. There are doubtless things relating to UAP, particularly if there are technologies involved, which we wouldn't want an adversary to find out about. So there are legitimate reasons sometimes for classification.
Yeah, and when you say legitimate reasons for classification, I mean, what makes us different, though? The United States has been less willing to put that kind of information on full public display out of fear of jeopardizing national security. But what makes our national security more susceptible or vulnerable than anybody else's?
Well, I think it's the fact that the United States is a nuclear-armed superpower, really the world's preeminent superpower. And a lot of this, frankly, is about geopolitics. Some of the paperwork that was made available about the previous UFO program, ATIP, talked about the catastrophic damage to the national interest that would arise if an adversary got hold of any of the technologies that we're now being told in classified testimony to Congress that exist here. So it's all about the technology, who gets it first, and can any of it be weaponized, which is a dire prospect.
Yeah, and just a few seconds left. Nick, do you ever think the United States reaches a day where we have access to that information just like other parts of the world have been enjoying for years?
I think so, and I hope so. Bring it on.
Okay, bring it on. You heard it right here from Nick Pope. Nick, thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
And the Washington Post is out with a new report that highlights how UFOs are not just an American phenomenon. They are studied around the world. In South America alone, 4 countries have government UFO programs, and the information is regularly shared with the public instead of being held as top secret. Well, joining me now for more on all of this is Nick Pope, a former UFO investigator for the British Defense Ministry, and Chris Impey, an astronomy professor at the University of Arizona. Welcome to you both. Good to have you. Nick, Great Britain has declassified and released 60,000 pages of UAP or UFO information. How does that compare with what the American government's done?
Well, yes, it's very impressive. Tens of thousands of documents, some of which were very highly classified, secret UK eyes only, for example. And I wrote some of them, I have to say. I think the UK is doing pretty well. America has done a lot in this area, but there's a lot more still to come. Obviously, Congress has had hearings, as you know, and a lot of that is still classified. I think the question of how much can we declassify and how much can be released depends on what the individual countries know. So if a country has a smoking gun, that might be a little difficult. If countries are just grappling with it and say we've got some fascinating reports, then they can disclose, as the United Kingdom has.
Chris, how do other countries around the world differ from the U.S. when it comes to UFOs and how they report them and whether or not they release any of this information to the public?
I think the urge to secrecy in the United States, is longstanding. It actually goes back to ground zero for UFOs, which was Roswell, 1947. We now know that metallic object, this deflated, seen in a field by a rancher and his son, was actually a high-altitude weather balloon, or balloon used to surveil possible nuclear tests by the Soviets. And the Americans just didn't want that to be public in 1947, at the edge of the Cold War. So that's how it all starts. And they have national security concerns, because if these objects are appearing to military pilots, they represent a potential national security threat. So that's sort of where the urge to secrecy comes from, I think.
We know, Chris, that American military pilots have reported sightings for years, many, many years, and in some cases have taken videos of them. Are pilots in other countries seeing similar things? Or is this just an American phenomenon?
Well, people are starting to share data, and it's become clear that the sightings by commercial pilots, rival the numbers seen by military pilots. There is an American exceptionalism thing going on here, because if you look at the world reports of UFO sightings, there are a very large number in the United States. The Washington Post article is from a correspondent working in Brazil. Brazil is a large country with a similar sized population. Number of sightings there per capita is very much lower than the US. And the sightings fall off at the Canadian and Mexican borders, which is a little suspicious if these are things that are just in the sky.
I'm curious, Nick, we all watched as David Grush, who gave an exclusive interview to NewsNation about being told that there was a top secret U.S. government program that had recovered craft and remains of non-human origin. He also testified before Congress. But these programs are so secret that the congressmen that they were testifying to didn't even know about it. Much less who was funding it. So in that case, you've got to wonder, it's not just, is this information public? Even within the government, there appears to be lots of secrets.
Absolutely. The U.S. intelligence community has 18 constituent parts to it, and there are suggestions that some of this has been taken outside of government altogether and put in the private sector, not least to take it further outside the scope of the Freedom of Information Act. But the Intelligence Community Inspector General and Congress are working hard as we speak to try and validate some of the claims that have been made by David Grush and others. Other whistleblowers are coming forward, and of course there are multiple UAP provisions drafted in the new defense bill, so there's a lot more to come.
Do we know, if this program exists, who knows about it? Does the president know about it? Does the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff know about it?
I think so. I think the president has to know in his capacity as commander-in-chief. You can't have a situation where the chairman of the Joint Chiefs comes into the Oval Office and says, Mr. President, the situation with the aliens has gone south. And the president says, what aliens?
What are you talking about? Yeah. All right. Very interesting. Nick Pope, Chris Impey, thanks so much for being here. Good to talk to you both.
Thank you.
But it's interesting. It does feel like UFOs are having a moment, Avi. We had the congressional hearings. It's sort of something everybody's talking about. It's all the buzz with these stories and the testimony. But it seems like in the scientific community, there's almost a different feeling, at least in relation to the latest developments in the hearings. I want you to listen to something Neil deGrasse Tyson said to Elizabeth Vargas, and then I'm curious what you think about it. Let's take a listen.
Well, in science, what people perhaps don't know is that eyewitness testimony is some of the lowest form of evidence you can bring to a scientific conference, which is odd because in the court of law, it's considered quite high. So here we are in these hearings thinking that the pedigree of the person delivering the information adds truth value to what they're saying. Whereas in science, part of what modernized science was our ability to create methods, tools, and machines to replace human senses in the reporting of what we experience. So I just need better data.
I'm curious what you think, Avi, because, for us, it does feel like a moment. It's very exciting with the testimony, and it feels like we're getting new information. But do you agree with him? I mean, from a scientific perspective, is it a little less is it more underwhelming?
Well, the problem is really that people like Neil are pretending they really care about data, but are not seeking the data. He is talking about it, but he is not practicing science. And what I'm trying to do is go to the Pacific Ocean, where we know there is an object that came from outside the solar system, and study it. Now, it's possible the government may have some materials, some evidence that we have no access to, but the sky is not classified, the oceans are not classified. And if Neil deGrasse Tyson was really curious about this question, he would have been seeking the evidence rather than saying, we don't have evidence, it's an extraordinary claim, you need evidence in order to say anything, but he's not actually doing it. And practicing science is very different from talking about science. He's talking about science. I'm practicing science. I write scientific papers, I publish, and I actually follow the evidence. And so that's what we try to do. Now, what I find strange is that many scientists resist this approach of trying to collect the evidence. Not only that they're not engaged in it, they are trying to push back and say it's a waste of time. And I say, you just sit back and relax. Let the science be done the way it should be done. And I am really curious if the government has materials or information that is currently hidden from view, because as a scientist, I agree with Neil that we need access to the data. So the fundamental question for me is whether we will learn about what lies outside the solar system by studying what's at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean before we learn it from politicians in Washington, D.C. Or maybe some miracle will happen and we will learn from government as well.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're all waiting for the government to come through and tell us everything. But for people who don't realize, I mean, Avi was literally out there with this massive, rake, essentially, raking the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, this massive mission, and they actually found these little stones. And it was kind of unbelievable that you were even able to find these things out there. Yeah, there they are, right.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite remarkable because these are less than a millimeter in size, and we searched across a region of 7 miles in length, and the depth of the ocean is more than a mile. And we managed to find those things. And, many of the scientists pretend to be a scientist, but they are not really seeking the evidence, and they push back with very strong opinions that are not supported by anything. So I'm saying, let's bring back science to where it belongs, collecting evidence rather than talking about it in talk show. Speaking about the implications, of course, there would be huge implications. So I have a new book coming out actually in a few days It's already available for pre-orders, and it talks about how significant such evidence would be for the future of humanity. It will inspire us to do better, to study what lies out in space, because it will be a wake-up call from a neighbor.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.